Please take a breath and center yourself with the ringing tone of the singing bowl. And I offer a quote from Nelson Mandela to possibly focus on. As I walk out the door towards the gate that would lead me to freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison. Good morning. If any of the readings today you would like a copy of, I'll put a sheet out at coffee hour, and if you send me an email, I'll put my email on the sheet. I'll be happy to share the readings. A couple of them may be hard to follow, and I apologize for that. In his Eternal Echoes, Celtic Reflections on Our Yearning to Belong, the Irish mystic and poet John O'Donohue writes, "Forgiveness is one of the really difficult things in life. The logic of receiving hurt seems to run in the direction of never forgetting either the hurt or the hurter. When you forgive, some deeper divine generosity takes over. When you can forgive, then you are free. When you cannot forgive, you are a prisoner of the hurt done to you. If you are really disappointed in someone and you become embittered, you become incarcerated inside that feeling. Only the grace of forgiveness can break the straight logic of hurt and embitterment. Forgiveness gives you a way out because it places the conflict on a completely different level. In a strange way, it keeps the whole conflict human. You begin to see and understand the conditions, circumstances, or weakness that made the other person act as they did.
Our first reading this morning is a poem by John, Someone Awakening to the Code for Her. For everything under the sun, there is a time. This is the season of your awkward harvest, when the pain takes you where you would rather not. Through the white curtain of yesterdays, to a place you had forgotten you knew from the inside out. And a time when that bitter tree was planted, that has grown always invisibly beside you, and whose branches your awakened hands now long to disentangle from your heart. You are coming to see how your looking often darkened when you should have felt safe enough to fall toward love. How deep down your eyes were always owned by something that faced them through a dark fester of thorns, converting whoever came into a further figure of the wrong. You could only see what touched you as already torn. Now the act of seeing begins your work of mourning. And your memory is ready to show you everything, having waited all these years for you to return and know. Only you know where the casket of pain is interred. You will have to scrape through all the layers of covering, and according to your readiness, everything will open. May you be blessed with a wise and compassionate guide who can accompany you through the fear and grief until your heart has wept its way to your true self. As your tears fall over that wounded place, may they wash away your hurt and free your heart. May your forgiveness still the hunger of the wound, so that for the first time you can walk away from that place, reunited with your banished heart, now healed and freed, and feel the clear, free air bless your new face. Our first reading this morning is a poem by John, Someone Awakening to the Code for Her. For everything under the sun, there is a time. This is the season of your awkward harvest, when the pain takes you where you would rather not. Through the white curtain of yesterdays, to a place you had forgotten you knew from the inside out. And a time when that bitter tree was planted, that has grown always invisibly beside you, and whose branches your awakened hands now long to disentangle from your heart. You are coming to see how your looking often darkened when you should have felt safe enough to fall toward love. How deep down your eyes were always owned by something that faced them through a dark fester of thorns, converting whoever came into a further figure of the wrong. You could only see what touched you as already torn. Now the act of seeing begins your work of mourning. And your memory is ready to show you everything. Having waited all these years for you to return and know, only you know where the casket of pain is interred. You will have to scrape through all the layers of covering, and according to your readiness, everything will open. May you be blessed with a wise and compassionate guide who can accompany you through the fear and grief until your heart has wept its way to your true self. As your tears fall over that wounded place, may they wash away your hurt and free your heart. May your forgiveness still the hunger of the wound, so that for the first time you can walk away from that place, reunited with your banished heart, now healed and freed, and feel the clear, free air bless your new face. Our first reading this morning is a poem by someone awakening to the possibilities for her. For everything under the sun, there is a time. This is the season of your awkward harvest, when the pain takes you where you would rather through the white curtain of yesterdays to a place you had forgotten you knew from the inside out. And a time when that bitter tree was planted that has grown always invisibly beside you, and whose branches your awakened hands now long to disentangle from your heart. You are coming to see how your looking often darkened when you should have felt safe enough to fall toward love. How deep down your eyes were always owned by something that faced them through a dark fester of thorns, converting whoever came into a further figure of the wrong. You could only see what touched you as already torn. Now the act of seeing begins your work of mourning. And your memory is ready to show you everything. Having waited all these years for you to return and know, only you know where the casket of pain is interred. you will have to scrape through all the layers of covering, and according to your readiness, everything will open. May you be blessed with a wise and compassionate guide who can accompany you through the fear and grief until your heart has wept its way to your true self. As your tears fall over that wounded place, may they wash away your hurt and free your heart. May your forgiveness still the hunger of the wound, so that for the first time you can walk away from that place, reunited with your banished heart, now healed and freed, and feel the clear, free air bless your new face.
Our second reading. According to Everett L. Worthington, Jr., Ph.D., a licensed clinical psychologist and professor of psychology at Virginia Commonwealth University, forgiveness is a topic of interest and study in both science and faith traditions. Studies show that when forgiveness is taught, practiced, and achieved, it promotes better mental health and well-being. In some cases, science and faith perspectives on forgiveness may overlap and reinforce each other. For example, both science and faith traditions emphasize the importance of empathy, compassion, and understanding in the forgiving process. Many faith traditions place a strong emphasis on forgiveness as a central component of their teachings and practices. For example, forgiveness is a central tenet in many religious texts, such as the Bible, the Quran, and the Buddhist sutras. In these traditions, forgiveness is seen as a core virtue and a way to promote healing, reconciliation, and spiritual growth. There is also evidence to suggest that faith can play a role in promoting forgiveness. For example, studies have found that individuals who have strong religious beliefs and practices are more likely to forgive others, even in difficult and challenging situations. From a scientific perspective, research has shown that forgiveness is associated with a range of psychological, social, and physical benefits, including improved mental health, reduced stress, improved relationships, and better physical health outcomes. Some studies have even begun to show that forgiveness has a positive impact on academics, lower blood pressure, better sleep, and less anxiety. Andrew Surzin, president of the Templeton World Charity Foundation, says research they have funded validates the science behind forgiveness. Quote, "It helps the people who are doing the forgiving. It helps inside your own skin," end quote.
Thank you, Georgetta. You're not a bad person if you're finding it difficult to forgive someone. You're human. As human beings, our brains are wired to avoid danger and to avoid anyone who is proven to be untrustworthy. Therefore, thinking about forgiving someone who harmed us goes against our very instincts. It is actually unnatural. If you have suffered trauma of any kind in your life, as an adult or in childhood, your brain's reaction to danger is acutely heightened, and forgiveness can be even more of a challenge. So what is forgiveness? In the most basic sense, it's a conscious decision. It's a choice, a decision to give up the need for vengeance or retaliation. It is a decision not to dwell on the wound or hatred of the offender. It is not easy, nor is it consistent with our most basic instincts. It requires understanding and empathy. Forgiveness is not possible without empathy. In fact, those without the capacity for empathy are not able to forgive, and most probably see forgiveness as weakness. Forgiveness frees us from a self-imprisonment of negative emotions. As Georgetta's reading made clear, it is good for us, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. In many ways, the gift of forgiveness is even a greater gift to ourselves than it is to the one to whom we offer the forgiveness. What is not part of forgiveness? Forgiveness is not the same as justice, nor does it mean trust is restored. It is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. It is not a pardon. Depending on the act, there are often realistic consequences. Most importantly, it does not mean forgetting, particularly if the act is perpetrated by someone who is still a danger. If one forgives such a person, they still must take steps for their own protection. Finally, forgiveness does not always end in reconciliation. The offender does not always experience genuine contrition. The offender may no longer be available, or the forgiver can no longer trust the offender, and even if they are capable of forgiving them. Are there things that are not forgivable? It's a question that has generated much literature, scientific, philosophic, and religious. There are so many atrocities that are hard to imagine how to forgive. The question is a worthy topic for consideration and discussion, but we're not going to try to answer it today. There seems to be an almost universal craving or seeking of forgiveness within many human beings. It can be found in many faith traditions and practices, as well as in existential poets and songwriters. The haunting sense that we are flawed or guilty, and thus must seek repair, redemption, or forgiveness is a common theme. The rap video we heard by TobyMac, by the way, if we were deferential to the mean age of our group, most of us probably remember where we were when Kennedy was shot. If you want to get an experience of his real audience, go home and play it at full volume. TobyMac clearly captures that craving for forgiveness. Over and over he sings, because we all make mistakes sometimes, and we've all stepped across that line. The song calls out for the relief from guilt for acts committed. Forgiveness can also be desired for what we've failed to do or failed to say. Or in the case of trauma, for powerful emotions we've felt that are inconsistent with who we think we are or should be. Some people find relief in religious practices, and some through personal healing, be it with a trusted friend or therapist or both. Consider Amazing Grace, the classic theme of redemption and forgiveness. It was written by Anglican clergyman John Newton years after his conversion, while reflecting on his past as a slave trade captive. Amazing Grace delivers a message of redemption that seems to touch the emotional core of so many people. Today, Amazing Grace is one of the most recognizable songs in the English-speaking world. It has had particular influence in folk music and has become an emblematic Black spiritual. Its universal message has been a significant factor in its crossover to secular music. It's been recorded thousands of times, including by artists such as Elvis, Aretha Franklin, Joni Mitchell, as well as a host of others. Who can forget that powerful moment when President Obama unexpectedly broke into this song during his remarks at the funeral for the victims of the Emanuel AME Church massacre? I can't. Forgiveness, given, received, and withheld, is such a powerful force in life for so many people. Let's examine some of the components and impediments for forgiveness, beginning with the biological, our brain, the human brain. There are three major components of the human brain. You make a fist like this. This is your brain stem. This is your limbic brain. This is the cortex. There are three major components in that brain: the brain stem, the limbic brain, and the cerebral cortex. The brain stem keeps us alive. It controls cardiorespiratory functions and basic activities such as freeze and recoil. Some refer to it as our reptilian brain that controls the basics of survival. The limbic brain seeks to avoid pain and discomfort. It generates anxiety and fear to protect us. It also seeks pleasure, remembering where to find it and always wanting more. The cerebral cortex is steering us and governing our impulses. It is where we make decisions that are sometimes contrary to our basic impulses, desires, and fears. To forgive is one of those difficult decisions. To forgive means to override the limbic brain's protective reaction to pain, harm, and danger, perceived or real. It is a choice that does not come easily, as it is contrary to our animal instincts. It takes a strong will to overcome the power of the negative emotions associated with being wounded. And even when the choice is made, our limbic brain will continue to be reactive, question it, and raise concerns. Thus, it takes a strong commitment to hold to a decision to forgive. Any of us who have experienced trauma, particularly when the feelings associated with it are unavailable or unresolved, will have a very strong instinctive response to danger. Forgiveness and trust will be difficult to achieve. Thus, we included Laura's reading of John O'Donohue's poem that very gently invites the work of healing for those who have experienced trauma in their life. Emotional wounds, like physical wounds, come in all shapes and sizes. Trauma is a continuum from the mild to the horrific. One of the tragic results of trauma is that the victim can be left with a frightening mix of emotions with which they cannot accept or cope, and thus lock them up in an interior vault. That disconnection of emotions has much influence in future relationships. In defending against those emotions, the brain has hidden away what is too painful to see, to understand, or accept about the self. Unfortunately, this impairs the emotional lens which we need to successfully interact with others and to form healthy, rewarding relationships. Thanks to a whole bunch of cognitive behavioral psychologists and therapists, technically I'm not one of them, there is a sort of recipe for learning to forgive or improving our capacity to forgive. I'll summarize it. First, we need to objectively recall and realistically understand what happened and the emotions we felt. When actual danger is involved, we also need to determine what we need to have happen in order to feel safe. Next, we need to understand the offense and the offender, to see them as a human being, to see them as more than just a perpetrator that harmed or hurt us. The key to this is empathy, our ability to see ourselves in the other, as well as compassion. This is why so many stress that more than forgiveness setting us free, it also is an act of love in offering forgiveness to another. It's probably the area where faith traditions offer the strongest appeal. Next is the ability, the willpower, if you will, to make a merciful decision to forgive, thus overriding our strong instincts to protect and defend, even to hate and retaliate. This may take time. For some, a methodical process such as journaling can be helpful. Thus, to forgive is a decision. It requires a mix of strength, self-awareness, empathy, compassion, and mercy. Finally, we need to be able to hold to our decision. That is not easy because our limbic brain will not support it. It will doubt the decision whenever possible, and the little devil will replay for you the pain and the hurt. Sometimes forgiveness requires us to make the decision so many times, day after day, and that's normal. The idea that you make that decision over and over again is nicely portrayed in the New Testament, in Matthew, when Peter asked Jesus, how many times does he need to forgive? 7 times, he asks. And he was looking for a gold star there because the tradition then was 3 times. But anyway, Jesus' response was, no, you must forgive 70 times 7. Jesus may not have been thinking about neurological brain functioning, but he was spot on. Doubts are so normal and expected. It is not easy to forget the wound, and in some cases we never will. In time and with effort, the limbic brain may move on, but it takes time and a commitment to hold to the decision to forgive. Forgiveness may be a miracle, but it's not a mystery. Forgiveness can be learned, and like most skills, it can be improved. It just takes practice. If you want to exercise your forgiveness muscle, try to get more comfortable by practicing small acts of forgiveness. Try being more forgiving of minor offenses of civility. While driving in North Jersey, try to be more forgiving. That may be harder. Maybe try journaling your reactions to the everyday minor offense we encounter. In The Spirituality of Perfection, I love that title, Ernest Kurtz draws from many wisdom traditions and schools of thought, as well as AA traditions. But the book opens with a wonderful quote by, of all people, Fay Vincent, the 8th Commissioner of Baseball. He said, and I quote, "Baseball teaches us, or taught many of us, how to deal with failure. We learn at a very young age that failure is the norm in baseball. And precisely because we have failed, we hold in high regard those who fail less often, those who hit safely 1 out of 3 chances and become stars. I also find it fascinating that baseball, alone in sports, considers errors to be part of the game, part of the rigorous truth. So in the forgiveness game, let's hold ourselves to the standard set by Babe Ruth, not Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi was quite nearly a saint. The Babe is one of the greatest baseball players in the history of the game. He holds a spectacular lifetime batting average of 342. However, that actually means the Babe failed almost 66% of the time. So let's be gentle with ourselves. We will sometimes fail at forgiveness, maybe often. I know I do. Developing a capacity for forgiveness does not naturally come to us, and it is not easy. It takes a lot of practice, sometimes a coach, and a whole lot of forgiveness. Thank you. Forgiveness brings about miracles. Forgiveness helps us understand others like a lamp that illuminates our own hearts, enabling us to let go of resentment, vengeance, and jealousy. It is a commitment, a choice to show mercy. Forgiveness is an expression of love. May it be so for each of us.